Thank you to everyone who supports Unfound through Patreon, PayPal, and YouTube. Hello, everyone. This is the April 2024 episode of Unfound. Today I'm going to be talking about and analyzing the March 4th, 2024 disappearance of Caleb Harris. He went missing from Corpus Christi, Texas, and he is a 21-year-old white male. So I'm recording this on April 28th of 2024, so he has been missing for almost 2 months. Before I get into this video, I hope you will give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber to the Unfound's YouTube channel yet. And please, if you want to support what we do here at Unfound, please hit the join button below. The learning points for this episode of Unfound Now and the disappearance of Caleb Harris are these. Number 1, creativity is not evidence. Number 2, perception versus reality. And number 3, reading the tea leaves. So now I'm going to take you to the map. I'm going to show you where Caleb was that night. Going to read a timeline to you and pose a question at the end of the map section. Then I will come back and get back into these 3 learning points, comparing Caleb's disappearance to some that we've featured on Unfound, the podcast that comes out every Friday. And then at the end, I will do my own analysis that may or may not be different than all of the analyses that have been done over the last almost 2 months. Okay, let's look at this map for the disappearance of Caleb Harris. I'm going to leave it in the mode that you see there. I'm not going to go to a satellite photo. Kind of muddies or muddles everything up there, and the blue dots kind of get camouflaged, and I don't want any of you to really not understand what I'm saying here. So what I'm going to do with this map, I'm just going to go through a very simple, what I would call very straightforward timeline of that night, I guess that morning, technically, early morning, and just point out these locations and also look at the surrounding area. And then I'm going to pose a question at the end of this section of this episode of Unfound Now, and then we'll go back and I will get into the 3 learning points and some more in-depth analysis of Caleb's disappearance. So at 12:56 a.m., Harris was captured by a doorbell as he played with a puppy in the parking lot alongside his roommates and friend. The friend left soon after, and there was no signs of anything amiss. This is this area right here. It's called the Cottages Apartments, and very coincidentally, my assistant Cherie's daughter lived in that complex at one time. So bizarre. Of all the places in all the world, her daughter lived there, to paraphrase a line from Casablanca. So that at 2:20 a.m., one roommate said he was going to bed, and Harris responded that he was going to order food via Uber Eats for his lunch at school. Everybody who knows about this disappearance at this point, a month later, knows that, yes, he had ordered some food that, of course, eventually he did not get. So once again, this is happening right here. Uber Eats is delivering to this location on Ennis Jocelyn Road. At 2:44 a.m., Harris sent a Snapchat video to his sister that appears to show him walking a puppy in the parking lot of the complex. Once again, that complex is right here. It's a big apartment complex, very similar to the apartment complexes I lived in when I lived in Vegas. Multiple buildings, a lot of spaces for car parking. I think there might be even, a main building where maybe the property manager has an office, something like that. That is once again right here where this red dot is. So that was at 2:44 a.m. He sent a Snapchat video to his sister. I will admit, my sister would never be awake at 2:44 in the morning, but maybe his is. At 3:03, so what would that be, 16, 19 minutes after the Snapchat video to his sister, at 3:03 a.m., he sent a Snapchat video to a friend showing a bridge within a few hundred feet of the entrance of the complex. This bridge is right here. See this little blue line right here that's like a little stream, creek, something like that? There's a little bridge that goes over there, and that is what I believe it's a couple hundred feet, so I'm taking for granted that is the bridge they're talking about. This is not a bridge that is out here on this like main highway. It's this little bridge right there. For some reason, he took a Snapchat out of it. I suppose if some people want to go to conspiracy land, maybe somebody else had his phone at that point. Just something to think about. I'm not necessarily saying you should believe that or I believe that, but given what was in the picture, it does maybe seem a little odd. Maybe him playing with a puppy is not so odd. People make videos and pictures of that all the time. Just taking a picture of a regular bridge like this, little just to get over the stream, only long enough to expand or span over this little stream, does seem odd. But that happened at 3:03 a.m. Then at 3:12 a.m., a nearby cell tower received the last location information from Harris's phone. I'm guessing somebody else has figured out where this tower is in this area. But that was the last ping that his phone ever made. But it was in the area where he lived here on Ennis Jocelyn Road. Then at 3:20 a.m., the Uber Eats driver left Harris's order at the door of his apartment as requested. So it took, just to remind everybody, that order took place at 2:20 a.m. And then the Uber Eats driver arrived at 3:20. So this order took an hour. It seems, I'm not trying to make this suspicious or anything, but it took an hour at that time of the morning, which to me, like I said, seems kind of long, but maybe not. I don't really know that much about Uber Eats. And I have read out there, some people have even been suspicious of the Uber Eats driver. Did something go on? And Harris was waiting, or Caleb was waiting, and something happened. It's out there. So that happened at 3:20 a.m. Order at 2:20, delivered at 3:20. Then finally at 11 a.m., so not quite 8 hours after the order was delivered, and almost exactly 8 hours after that last Snapchat video that he sent of the bridge, one of Harris's roommates found his order still sitting at the door outside of their apartment. Once again, here at this location. The roommates were alarmed when they discovered his truck keys and wallet were still at the apartment. They searched for Harris briefly and reported him missing soon after, just like they should have done. So that is the area. I just want to zoom out here for a moment. You do see lots of water. Lots, and there's the Gulf right there. In fact, this location is almost directly west of where I live here in Florida, just directly right across the Gulf, almost. So I want you to think about something. Just put this in your head, just something to think about. So from the time span from the last Snapchat video at 3:03 a.m. to then 3:12 a.m. when a nearby cell tower received the last location information from Harris's phone, that's 9 minutes. You will note that it takes 8 minutes to walk from where he was for that last Snapchat video over here. I can't get the dot to go over to the water, but it's 8 minutes from here over to this location, and we might imagine it takes 1 more minute to go from there to the water, which of course would add up to 9 minutes. Just going to put it out there. Is that a coincidence? Or is it something else? Okay, let's go back to my learning points for this video, and I will then get into my analysis of Caleb's disappearance. Okay, I'm back to talk about the 3 learning points and to give you my analysis of Caleb's disappearance. Before I do that, once again, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. And if you'd like to support what we do here at Unfound, hit the join button below. And is there anything else you should be doing? Maybe you want to check out the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. Like the page on Facebook. Join the discussion group on Facebook. We also have Instagram and TikTok accounts. So please join us and or follow us in all of those locations. First learning point. Creativity is not evidence. This is something that all of us, myself included, we really have to fight this tendency when we look at disappearances. Of course, with disappearances, we rarely have any forensics to discuss, blood, fingerprints, anything like that. Of course, since it's a disappearance, we don't have a body. We don't have, if we're to believe that the missing person is deceased, we usually do not have a weapon or anything like that. So there's a lot of pieces missing from the puzzle, and this causes us, like I said, myself included, to really start filling in the blanks with our imagination, as if we are writing our own mystery novels. This is a mistake. Being that this is my work, this is all that I do, I've been stung by this a few times, and I'm trying to learn from it. But what I found is it's just best to analyze what is given, not what is not given. And I can understand. You find out about Caleb's disappearance. You want to talk to people online about it. You get it going back and forth, and like I said, our imaginations start running wild. Like I said, this is a mistake. I realize we have these creative minds and brilliant minds, but it's amazing how much of the time our imaginations don't lead us to the correct answer. And some examples that I've run into in doing the Unfound podcast for 7.5 years now. Very early on in Unfound's existence, there was the disappearance of Crystal Morrison, a woman who was at work. She called somebody to pick her up. When the ride showed up, she wasn't there. And she was missing, I think, for 8 or 9 years. And I will tell you, at the time, back in 2017, I think when that episode came out, that I thought that she had called somebody else maybe because she had a drug issue, although she was a recovering addict. Did she call her dealer from before? Did she get picked up? And did she overdose, or did he take advantage of her, or something like that? That was my theory at the time. It wasn't until, I think, 2019 that we found out that that didn't happen. But the point is that there was no proof she contacted anybody except the person who was supposed to pick her up. I entered things into the evidence locker that didn't exist. And it cost me. Got that one wrong. Turns out that Crystal simply walked away. She went down to a Shell station, bought something to eat or drink, and then walked off to the woods and died from a combination of she was sick that day, she was very, very thin, underweight due to her previous drug addiction. It was 100 degrees in North Carolina that day. And then on top of that, it very well may be that maybe she wasn't over her addiction and actually did have drugs with her and overdosed in those woods. She might have overdosed as well. All of that is what caused her disappearance. It was not foul play. I also got the disappearance of Esther Westenbarger wrong very early on in Unfound's existence, where I thought that her brother caused her disappearance. We now know that Esther was probably drinking and driving, and she just drove into a retention pond, and she and her car were missing approximately for about 10 years, and then she and her car were found by total luck. Me, I thought it was foul play. I was wrong. I entered things in to the evidence locker that didn't exist. My imagination just went wild. Mistake. Now, more recently, I got a disappearance wrong. It was an Unfound Now episode of Dylan Rounds, who went missing back in 2022. I thought that he just walked away. We now know that he was actually murdered. But to be clear, when I did that Unfound Now episode, there were no signs of violence or anything else. So I did get it wrong, but once again, I'm trying to stick to the idea I'm not going to try to analyze anything that's not there, that's at least not public. There may be things there that police don't talk about for us, the public. I'm only going to look at what's actually in the public sphere and not allow my imagination to go anywhere else. So most importantly, you have to understand something about Caleb's disappearance. Very, very important. I'm not sure the public realizes this. Statistically, Caleb's disappearance, the way it looks, the facts that are public, it ends up being statistically that these disappearances are self-caused, that nobody else is involved in the disappearance. That's what the statistics say. Just keep that in mind. Next, learning point. Perception versus reality. And this has to do with the cell phone. That he Snapchatted at 3:03 a.m. and then at 3:12 a.m., 9 minutes later, seemingly, the phone went off. It last pinged at that tower. They've not found, I guess, any other towers where that phone pinged. And we automatically think, well, somebody, going back to that imagination of ours, well, somebody attacked him and turned his phone off. Somebody attacked him, got his phone, and took the battery out of it. Something along those lines. You should know something. I've covered 328 disappearances on Unfound so far since 2016. Half of those are what we would call are in the cell phone area. Let's just say the last 20 years, so 2004 to the present. All the others are before what I would determine to be the cell phone era, when cell phones became popular. So break that down. So 160 disappearances. We have yet to cover a disappearance on Unfound where a missing person's phone was found without the battery in it, or damaged or destroyed on purpose. Now, we have missing people. Their phones are missing as well, certainly. But there's no proof, at least in Unfound's catalog, that when people go missing, and if you want to think that it's foul play, that this attacker or attackers automatically look for the person's cell phone to turn it off or damage it or do something like that. There's no proof of that. I'm not saying it's never happened, but it's just not statistically significant. All right? Now, have we found cell phones of missing people later? They're still missing, unfortunately, to this day, but their cell phones were found, yes. And none of them were damaged. And none of them had the batteries taken out of them. And one that's on my mind that I have written here in my notes was T.J. Murray, coincidentally also from Texas, where he left a bar, might have been drunk, and his truck was just not even an eighth of a mile or something down the road. He never walked back to his truck. He is still missing, by the way, all these years later. There is a belief out there that he was attacked because he had slapped a woman in that bar, and that's what he got kicked out of this bar. And a theory out there, once again, imagination, is saying that, well, she and others tracked him down and did something to him. You should know that this woman completely denies all of this. And I have to tell you, I'm inclined to believe that. Doesn't mean other people couldn't have maybe wanted to get revenge for her and she knows nothing about it. Certainly possible. But his phone was found intact. not damaged, and it was sitting along the side of the road as if somebody just dropped it there. Or a car was going by and somebody threw it out the window. It was not disconnected from the network. The chip wasn't taken out of it. It wasn't damaged. The battery wasn't taken out of it. And that's just one example. We have several other examples in Unfound's catalog. So when missing people's phones are found, they don't seem to be damaged or altered in any way to stop communicating. Very well could be the battery was turned off, or it ran out of power, is what I meant to say. It ran out of power, which of course is going to happen eventually with any phone, whether it's damaged or not. But nothing that looked like it was done on purpose to make sure the phone couldn't communicate with a tower anymore. So keep that also in mind for Caleb's disappearance. Last learning point for Caleb's disappearance. Number 3, reading the tea leaves. What does this mean? This is a term that is used outside of true crime. In market analysis, if you're trying to determine where is the Dow going, where is the NASDAQ going, where is the S&P 500 going, and people will try to look at what the Fed chairman is saying, or some analyst, or somebody who manages one of these big investment funds, trying to read between the lines of where they think the economy is going. This is an example. This is also done when reporters are analyzing what the Supreme Court justices say during some sort of trial. Which way are they going to go on this particular topic that is before them at the Supreme Court, before the votes ever come out? So they'll start parsing words. Reporters will start parsing words, and like I said, reading between the lines. And this is also called sometimes reading the tea leaves, which kind of comes from mysticism and psychics and things like that, where there would be people who would say they could predict the future by looking at tea leaves. This comes from something that's come down through the generations. But trying to predict what somebody is thinking in contrast to what they're saying. That's another way that could it be defined. And this is being done a lot with Caleb's parents. What they've said in interviews, they're talking about, they must be very religious people, talking about the Bible and calling out to Caleb. And the public is trying to decode their words. Well, what do they really mean by this? And I say, well, getting into how, well, he shared, a checking account with one of his parents, and they were only giving him $20 a month to spend, getting into all of these things. And what I would say, this is all a mistake. You cannot judge these people by what they're saying this early on in a disappearance. It's not fair to them. They are having a very traumatic experience right now. They are. So I know they're trying to be helpful. I, of course, do not suspect them in their son's disappearance. But that still doesn't mean that everything they say should be taken at face value. They're very emotional right now. And surely, as I've learned, given that I cover a lot of disappearances that are very old, I cover disappearances that are going back to the 90s, 1980s, 70s. And I can see what my guest here in 24 is saying. I can go back on newspapers.com and see what this exact same person said 30 years ago and how that person reacted, whether it's a parent or a sibling. What they said, what they were quoted as saying back, let's just pick a year, 1993, in contrast to what they're saying to me in 2024. Now, here in 2024, the disappearance is still unsolved, still a traumatic experience. But it's just not the same. And so my guests sound much differently from when the disappearance happened and then 30 years later to when I finally get to talk to them. This is what I've noticed. So I get it. people are thirsty for information regarding Caleb's disappearance. It certainly has caught everybody's attention here in the United States, given the circumstances, at least what we think the circumstances are, at least the way the circumstances have been portrayed to the public. And you should know I don't have any inside information on his disappearance at all, unlike when I cover disappearances for the actual podcast that comes out every Friday, where I do have inside information because I'm talking to these people behind the scenes. This is not a situation with these Unfound nows. I'm looking at the information just like all of you are. What I'm saying is I just wouldn't put too much stock into what the parents or any family members are saying at this time. I realize it's very easy to do that. You want more information. It's very interesting to you. You really want this mystery to be solved, and you want to know what the answer is. But I would try to keep that to a minimum. And one more thing, what I've also learned is certainly families withhold facts about their missing loved ones at this time. Now, once they get to me, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, when I start talking to them for the first time, then my perception is then everything comes out. But in a time like this, if Caleb does have maybe some secrets or something, it very well could be that he could show up tomorrow alive. And of course, I hope that he does. And of course, they're hoping that too. And they may be thinking, you know, if we reveal too much about him, what if he ends up being alive, he comes home, and we've said all these things, we've revealed all of his secrets. So we have to keep that in mind as well. So I wouldn't be surprised that the parents at this point are withholding things about him that maybe could lead to have something to do with his disappearance. Maybe they don't. We really don't know. So what is my analysis of Caleb's disappearance? I'll go back to something that I said earlier. The way it looks now, the way his disappearance has been portrayed by local media in Corpus Christi, statistically, these disappearances usually end up being self-caused, meaning the person chose to leave all by himself or herself, statistically. Very well could be there was foul play here, but if you were going to Vegas on this and you wanted to put odds on something, the odds are certainly that Caleb caused his own disappearance. I realize, well, Pete, why would he do that? Well, that would take knowing Caleb really, really well, and at this point, we're not going to get to do that. This is the very reason that on Unfound episodes, I take so much time. 45 minutes, the first 45 minutes to an hour of an interview, take a lot of time getting to know the missing person. But the media, local media, anywhere doesn't do that. It's just the circumstances. He was here, then he wasn't here. It's times and dates, locations, when really disappearances are about people. They aren't about circumstances. So statistically, the way the circumstances have been portrayed, this is something Caleb caused his own disappearance. Very well may end up being something else. But here's what really sticks out to me. As I pointed out in the map portion of this, he just happened to be, from that Snapchat video at 3:03 a.m., he just happened to be 9 minutes in walking distance from that bridge to the water that I guess was, north of his location. This is something that catches my mind, catches my eye, certainly. And this does remind me of the disappearance of Chance Engelbert, a guy who was his girlfriend or wife. He was at her family's house, and he got into an argument with them, and he stormed off. And he actually said that I think he was in Nebraska. He said he was going to, I guess, walk back to Wyoming, if you can imagine it. And I made the point that in looking at a map, if you were to actually walk back to Wyoming from where he was in Nebraska, you would have to go past an area where it says a bridge was, but guess what? the bridge or walking bridge or whatever wasn't there anymore? And what if he got to that spot and there was a thunderstorm and it was raining? What if Jay Chance decided, the hell with it, I'm going to try to get across this river anyway, even though this path isn't here anymore? That is my theory. He's still missing. Because I could look at Google Maps and say, well, if he Googled it, how to get back, this is the way he would go. And the fact is, the map would have misled him. For some reason, this comes to mind when I think about Caleb's disappearance. That what kind of coincidence is it that his phone went off 9 minutes after he Snapchatted at 3:03 a.m., and it just happened to be a 9-minute walk from that location to the water. Also, what it also means regarding this is that what exactly was he doing out there? So he Snapchatted at 3:03 a.m. He knows that his Uber Eats delivery is going to be getting there soon. Now, see, I would think that an Uber Eats delivery that early in the morning would get there faster than an hour. But it seems he wasn't too concerned about it. It had been over 40 minutes. I guess, of course, the delivery wasn't there yet. But he's still hanging out on the main street. It seems like an odd choice to me. It does. What it also means, though, regarding the ping and his phone is that 9 minutes later, he was still in the area. So you have to think of it this way. Let's say 2 minutes after he did that Snapchat video, somebody came by and abducted him, 3:05 a.m. Do we really think that 7 minutes after that, the phone would still be pinging off the same tower? Would these people not want to get away pretty quickly? Of course, at that time in the morning, you get 5 miles away, and surely by that time, his phone would be pinging off a different tower. Instead, it was still pinging off the one that would be if he was still in his complex, in his apartment complex. This would seem to fly in the face of any idea that he got picked up by somebody and got driven away. Seemingly. Once again, this is the scientific part of this. Also hard to understand, and I realize I'm not 21 anymore, is that would he really go for a hookup in his bare feet? We have to realize something. The roommates, it seems like his friends have been very forthcoming. Not one of them said he said anything about meeting somebody that morning. He might have been keeping it a secret, certainly, but you would think that if he was bringing somebody back to the apartment, he has a roommate, he would tell the roommate. You'd think. Likewise, you wouldn't think that he would be waiting for a hookup in bare feet out on the street. Would he? So there's that. Very well could have been fooled. We know that happens. Catfished. Very well could be. But my impression is that if you're meeting a stranger, what kind of stranger are you meeting on some sort of dating app or whatever, and you're meeting this person at 3 a.m? Should not all the red flags be going up all over the place? You would think. You would think. There's some other things to think about. I actually looked this up. Now, I realize that NamUs is not a complete database. And we might, once again, for all the people allowing their imaginations to run wild, there's somebody out there catfishing young men and maybe killing them in the Corpus Christi area. Would you believe that in the year of 2023, so last year, there's not one disappearance listed in the Corpus Christi area? Not one. And none here for 2024 yet, except, although Caleb's not listed there yet. But Corpus Christi does put their missing people on NamUs, because you can see, you can go there, there's a whole list. But the most recent ones are 2022. So if this is something that's going on in Corpus Christi, it is not getting picked up by NamUs or any reporting agency. So this would seem to fly in the face of thinking that there was some sort of serial killer out there. Although I admit that NamUs is not a complete database, but it has enough people on there that you can start to draw inferences about locations, cities, counties, states. We also have to think about this. If he was meeting somebody and thought that he wouldn't call Uber Eats for food and then get in a car with somebody. Very well could be abducted, but this then goes back to the phone pings. We have to remember his wallet was left at his place. Would he go somewhere? If he was meeting somebody and thought he was going to be going somewhere, would he not have his wallet? I think most people would. And likewise, would he not have told his roommate if somebody were coming over? You'd think. So, also regarding the abduction scenario or meetings or just random wrong place, wrong time, seems like the worst luck ever to me. To be standing out there by this bridge on that street and somebody just happens to come by at 3 a.m. and says, oh yeah, we want to abduct this guy. It doesn't seem like this is a thing in Corpus Christi, according to the statistics, according to NamUs. So I guess what I'm saying here is that I'm going to go with the stats right now, saying that for whatever reason, and this is another point that I've had to learn the hard way, it's tough to get inside missing people's heads. We can certainly get in suspects' heads because they want to get, at least we can say they want to get away with their crimes. Hard to get in the mind of suspects because we find so many situations where disappearances are solved and there's no reason to believe foul play, that these missing people just don't know what they were thinking. Crystal Morrison, as an example I gave earlier, don't know. Never know. And there are other examples in Unfound's catalog that are exactly like that. So you may be saying, well, Caleb surely wouldn't have done that. He surely wouldn't have walked over to the water. Yeah, except for all of the stories we have of young people ending up in bodies of water and dying. Except for that. It's very sad. But we have to be realistic. We have to be very grounded and rational regarding this. This happens often. Why? Just don't know what's going on inside these kids' heads. So that's where I am right now on this. Of course, as facts change, theories change. But at this point, I have to go on the record in thinking, for whatever reason, Caleb caused his own disappearance. So that is this episode of Unfound for April of 2024. Please feel free to comment below. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, consider joining this channel with the button below. Support what we do here at Unfound, and I will talk to you again next month.